for tuning in today. If you're new here, my name is Linda, and I'm just going to jump right into the video today where I compare the cost of a road trip in a car versus in an RV. I think traveling, going on road trips and exploring the country is just embedded deeply in our culture, probably from our, frontier days. And it's something that is still prevalent today, especially the last few years with the pandemic and all the restrictions on air travel. I think the RV industry and the whole van life movement has just absolutely soared in popularity. It just seems like everybody's out on the open road. But there's been a bit of a decline lately, especially since this past summer, because of rising gas costs, just inflation, and just the overall general cost of living seems to have gone up so much in such a short amount of time. And a lot of people are wondering if RV life or road trips are still a viable option or a viable way of traveling, or an activity that they can even afford. So I hope today's video will shed a little light on that as I compare the costs of a road trip, whether you take it in a car or an RV. And I think the results are going to surprise you. I want to first preface this by saying that there are many, many factors that can ultimately affect the ending cost of a road trip, from the type of car you drive, the way you drive, the destinations you go to, and the kinds of lodging that you stay at. So this is by no means an exact or scientific study, but I'll be sharing real life data and costs that I've experienced. And I think it'll be enough to give you a general idea of the kinds of costs that you can expect to pay, and also be a good comparison of whether it's better to travel in a car and stay at hotels or travel in an RV. So let's get to the numbers. I recently went on a road trip through the Pacific Northwest and Alberta, Canada. I traveled about 1,350 miles and up and down multiple mountain passes and needed accommodations for 6 nights. So let's first start with an estimate of how much that would have cost had I driven a car and stayed at hotels instead of my RV. My car is almost 15 years old, so I didn't want to use the stats on my car and how it handles. So I thought it would be more fair to use the US national mileage according to the EPA, which is 25.4 miles per gallon. Again, this can vary greatly on the type of car you drive, whether it's an electric, a hybrid, or even a diesel car. But for the sake of this study, I'm going to stick with a regular gasoline engine because that's what I'm most familiar with. To travel 1,350 miles, I would have had to fill up my gas tank about 4 times. Now, my particular trip posed a little bit of a unique situation in that half of my trip was in Canada and half of it was in the US. The reason why this is significant is because Canadian gas prices are typically higher than in the US, and it certainly was the case on my road trip. If you're not familiar with traveling in Canada, at first when you see the gas prices, you might get really excited because they look really low. However, they price it per liter. So there are 3.79 liters per gallon, so this actually makes their price a lot higher than in the US. You do have the exchange rate that helps a little bit. Like right now, it's about 75 cents per Canadian dollar, but it's still quite a bit higher than the US gas prices. So here are the locations and the prices at each of these locations that I would have paid had I filled up 4 times with my car, and it brings the total fuel estimate to about $231. Pretty good, right? But wait, now let's talk about lodging. This is where it can get really expensive if traveling by car. Now, again, this can vary greatly depending on the type of lodging you stay at. You can stay at a really shady roadside motel for pretty cheap, or you can stay at a really nice Airbnb. So again, this could really change the ending cost of your trip. So For the sake of this study, again, I'm going to use another national average, and this is according to a company called Statista, which is a global analysis and research company, and they have the US average hotel rate at $125 per night. So for lodging for 6 nights at $125, it would have cost about $750 for lodging on this trip. So when you add the fuel estimate and the lodging estimate together, you get about $981 it would have cost traveling by car and staying at hotels for a week-long road trip. So now let's take a look at how much it actually cost in my RV. Now, unfortunately, my RV only gets about 8 miles per gallon, so I had to fill up the tank a lot more often, 7 times to be exact. Here are the prices that I paid at each of my fill-ups, and it brings the total cost of gas to $645. Oh, I know, it was pretty expensive, a lot more than in the car, but where you save money in an RV is in the lodging. Of course, you can spend $0 if you dry camped or boondocked somewhere, but I chose to stay at a campground each of the nights because I knew the temperatures were going to be really low and I wanted to have power at the very minimum so I would be able to hook up extra heaters and make sure that we were warm and safe. Quick disclaimer, if you happen to see any of my other videos about this trip, you'll know that I actually cut the trip short by 2 days. However, I had already made reservations and paid for all of the nights for camping ahead of time. So even though I cut my trip short, I still ended up paying for 6 nights. The prices range from $36 a night at the lowest to $57 a night at the most expensive campground, and it brings the total cost for camping fees to $263. When you do the math and you add up the fuel price and the lodging for the RV road trip, it brings the total to $908. It was actually less than the car road trip. Does that surprise you? It surprised me. I thought there was going to be a really big significant difference one way or the other, but actually the prices are very similar. With the prices being pretty similar and comparable, it really just comes down to personal preference and how you want to travel and what is important to you on a road trip or what you're trying to get out of a road trip. You know, are you the type that wants to have guaranteed amenities where you go, where you're not going to have to worry about where to dump your tanks or where to get water to fill up your RV? Or do you like the freedom of living off of the grid and staying in really remote places? Or do you like to have all of the comforts of home with you along the way? Or do you like staying at new, unique spots every location? Is that part of the experience that you're looking for? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely interested to hear what's important to you and what your priorities are on a road trip and seeing how many different viewpoints there are out there. You know, a lot of people are giving up on van life and RV life because they say, you know, gas prices are just too expensive. But the unfortunate truth is that everything is expensive now. You know, hotel fees, Airbnb costs, food, you know, costs, everything is going up. So it really comes down to, you know, what is important to you and how you want to travel and how, you know, how you want to spend your time. So I hope this video is able to give you a little bit of insight and show you that, you know, the costs are comparable, and I hope it encourages you to continue to plan to travel this great country and explore the world. Well, that's it for today. I hope to see you back next week where I'm finally going to show you my finished kitchen. I was finally able to get all of the renovations done that I wanted to get done on it, so I'm really excited to show you the final product. But until then, travel safe and drive safe, and I hope to see you soon. Take care.